When Maran wrote his Shulchan Aruch, I don't mean to discuss here the halachic methodology of Maran, but rather the purpose of Maran Shulchan Aruch. Maran did not write a Shulchan Aruch like you think, or like most of us think, in writing just a code of law, another code of law that people could look at and read and decide, and if they want, they want, if they don't, they don't. Maran's book was written in a context of the period in which he lived. There's a tremendous book. Baruch Hashem, Hashem allowed me in my library. Recently I acquired a set of this for my library. The book Keter Shem Tov. Rabbi Shem Tov was a chief rabbi in London, mainly also in Manchester. I believe he also had what to do in Ramsgate. Keter Shem Tov is perhaps the greatest codifier of Sephardic minhagim. He's such a great codifier of Sephardic minhagim that the printers of the Keter Shem Tov made it very clear to write in the introduction to the book, be very careful that you shouldn't follow everything in this book. He writes dangerous things in this book. So, what do you want? That's what they write about anybody who speaks the truth. Keter Shem Tov has a fascinating introduction to the third volume on the laws of Pesach, about Maran and about the Ramah, and the purpose of Maran writing a Shulchan Aruch. Maran is the student of Mahari Berav. Mahari Berav is exiled from Spain, like most of the people living in Tzfat at the time. Mahari Berav comes to Eretz Yisrael, realizes the Spanish Inquisition has taken over, the world is falling apart, Jewish communities have been uprooted from places where they had lived for centuries. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol nהיה b'dvaro. And Mahari Berav sees chaos, and he sees the opportunity. Mahari Berav sees in the disaster perhaps what others may have seen in other disasters, that is, the end must be near. This is a time, it's an opportunity for the Jewish people to bring about the redemption. And he in Tzfat gathers around him a group of Chachamim who decide, according to a methodology of the Rambam, I mentioned there's a footnote in my book Hi Shalom about this, to reconvene the Sanhedrin. What's the purpose of a Sanhedrin? What's the goal of a Sanhedrin? The goal of a Sanhedrin is to make sure that the Jewish people no longer will be Sephardim or Ashkenazim or Hasidim or Temanim. The goal of a Sanhedrin is to make sure that the Jewish people are united under one legal code. Mahari Berav wants to put together the Supreme Court of the Jewish people. Everyone can listen to the Supreme Court. It doesn't make a difference where you come from which country you left, which family, which last name you have. You can be part of this vision of the Jewish people reuniting in their homeland under one umbrella. Mahari Berav reconvenes the Sanhedrin, and the famous opponent of the Mahari Berav, the Mahalbach, Rabbi Levi ibn Chabiv, from Yerushalayim, is furious. How dare you reconvene a Sanhedrin in Tzfat? Why not in Yerushalayim? That's where we're from. And there's a famous story, and I'm not here to dig in with all the details of that story. Mahari Berav opposes the newfound Sanhedrin. Mahalbach opposes the newfound Sanhedrin of Mahari Berav. And ultimately what happens is that the Sanhedrin falls apart. Mahari Berav had the opportunity to give 4 people hasmacha, to ordain 4 people as rabbis. One of those, and perhaps the most prominent of those, is Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo. Maran is born into this environment. Maran is living in this environment of my rabbi tried to unite the Jewish people, and he failed. He failed because of opposition, because of little details. And Maran decides to set out and write a Shulchan Aruch. What do you mean a Shulchan Aruch? If we can't put together a Supreme Court to determine between this custom and that custom, let's at least write a book that will help us make sense of everything that is going on, of all the different opinions that exist in the Jewish world and all the rabbinic opinions and rabbinic literature. And Maran sets out to write his Shulchan Aruch. First the Bet Yosef, which he intended to write in the Rambam, but ultimately ended up writing up in the Tur. You can see there why. And Maran writes a Shulchan Aruch using a principle of 3. The Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh. 2 of them Sephardim, 1 of them an Ashkenazi. Maran's goal was to write a book where he could collect the opinions of Chachamim, sift through them based on a somewhat democratic process. And yes, of course, those who are not happy with it, there are imperfections in that process. And Maran writes a book of halakha not for Sephardim, but for the entire Jewish world. Why? To put an end finally, to division among the Jewish people. Why Maran? Because Maran, that was his passion. That was his belief. The Rama, despite what he writes in letter 48 in his Teshuvot, where he calls Maran Nasi Elohim B'tochenu, the Prince of God in our midst, the Kol HaCholek Alav Kecholek Ala Shechina, anyone who argues with him is like arguing with the Shechina. The Rama, while trying to unite the Jewish people, everyone should use the Shulchan Aruch, added notes, Hagot. And in those notes, step by step, piece by piece, the Rama decides to say, in Ashkenaz we do this differently. In Ashkenaz we have a minhag like this. We have a minhag like that. Yesh Ozrim, Yesh Matirim. And ultimately, in the words of Rabbi Shem Tov Gagin, the author of the Keter Shem Tov, with one stroke of his pen, the Rama brought down the tower of the Shulchan Aruch and set a precedent in halakha where now you don't have to be united by Maran. The Jews don't have to follow the code of Maran, but rather, everyone should do whatever they were doing beforehand, and in anything, the chaos increased. It didn't decrease. Rabbi Shem Tov writes this introduction in Nisan of Tafshin Chet. That's Nisan 1948. 1 month and 5 days before the establishment of the State of Israel. Rabbi Shem Tov writes in what seems to be a prophetic vision. He says, if we were not able to unite the Jewish people under one umbrella, what's going to happen if very soon the Jewish people come home and Sephardim and Ashkenazim come live together in Eretz Israel? What kind of chaos will follow if we're all following different rules? What will be with kashrut? What will be with weddings? What will be with divorces? What will be with prayers? What will be with synagogues? What will be with observance and families and intermarriage between families? Says Rabbi Shem Tov, you cannot wait for Eliyahu to sift out this problem because Eliyahu Hanavi does not deal with matters of halakha and minhagim. That's not his purpose. And he mentions there a list of sources. And he signs off 1 month and 5 days before the founding of the State of Israel, saying, if we don't find a solution to this mess of deviation from the Shulchan Aruch, I don't know who's going to be able to fix it. In steps Chacham Ben Zion Meir Chai Uziel, who I'm not sure even saw these words. And he believed, like I mentioned in my class, if you go onto YouTube, Jewish Stockholm Syndrome, the time has come for the Jewish people to sit around a table and to unite and to sit around representatives of every Jewish group and to sift through minhagim. Sephardim, Ashkenazim, Chasidim, Temanim, Mitnagdim, whoever you want, bring their Chachamim. They should appoint Chachamim to come to the table. We'll start with A, we'll end with Z, we'll sift through every single minhag and make sure that we can get the Jewish people to agree on standards of shechita, on standards of marriage, on standards of divorce, on standard of observance of prayer, of living together so we can be one people. And in the words of the Prophet, we will no longer be two separate people living in one land. I have a video about that called Two Torahs in our Candid Conversation playlist. Ultimately, what happens is that nobody answers Rav Uziel's call. And he's left alone, trying again to unite the Jewish people with no one there to help him. Rav Chaim David Halevy, himself a student of Rav Uziel, proposes the next best solution. If we can't have a Sanhedrin, and we can't have a code of Jewish law, everybody accepts. And if we can't have a code of Jewish law, everybody accepts, and we can't even come to the table to write a new code of Jewish law. At the very least, what we should do, says Rabbi Chaim David Halevy, is when we teach halachot to say, Sephardim do this, Ashkenazim do that. So that people, and I'm speaking now in my words, won't grow up the way I did. Going to a Jewish schools, having rabbis and teachers who would teach us halakha, would teach us Torah, but knew nothing about our heritage, knew nothing about our customs. When someone asks a question in the Shiviti forums, either one of them, I do my best to share, Maran writes this, Rambam writes that, the Rama argues, Ashkenazim, Sephardim, not to create division, but to promote togetherness. And so to back up, why Maran? Maran argues with the Rambam sometimes, even though Chazon Ish blames him for just being a copy and paste of the Rambam. Why Maran, the Sephardim, not anybody else? What, are we all supposed to become Sephardim now? My dear friends, halakha before Maran was Sephardic. Halakha before Maran was Ashkenazi. There were different traditions in Am Yisrael. Maran came to break down that divide. And he wrote a Shulchan Aruch, which is not perfect. Why is it not perfect? Precisely because sticking up for only one kind of minhag would be exactly the reason why nobody would accept it as binding on themselves. Precisely like the writings of the Rambam, as much as that hurts my heart to say. The Rambam wrote the most glorious code of Jewish law we've ever seen. My dear friends, the Rambam's Mishneh Torah and its purity, Hashem should forgive me for what I'm saying, but I'm sure Maran would agree, is superior to that of Maran's. The Rambam is literally codifying the Talmud. But when Ashkenazim saw the Rambam, with zero representation of their opinions, and for those diehard Rambamists, as deviant as they may be from the Talmud, they rejected it. And it became a book of theory. I have a video about that. Don't study the Rambam, follow the Rambam. And Maran comes up in like Rav Uziel, but many hundreds of years before. He says, listen, if we can't be perfect, at the very least, let's compromise. Do you know who else did that? None other than Rabbi Moshe Isserlish. The Ramah. The Ramah's rabbi was a diehard for Ashkenazim minhagim. But the Ramah says, Chevre, Rabotai, let's unite around one book and consistently, step by step by step, 95% of the time, the Ramah accepts Maran's rulings in halakha. Because even the Ramah wished for us to rally behind the Shulchan Aruch. So what about Yemen, where I come from? The great bastion of Rambamist Jewry? Well, in Yemen there were many camps, and I have a shiur about this in my first few classes in Rav Kapach's Mishneh Torah series. And I didn't come Chadila to touch Yemenite minhagim. They should stay where they are. In Yemen, and I have a brief clip about this as well, there's an article by Rabbi Dr. Ratzon Arusi. I cannot recommend this article enough. About the spiritual leadership of the Maharitz, Rabbi Yechia Salach, in Yemen. The Maharitz comes onto a scene of Yemen that is already mixed up, that is already confused, between a Sephardic Shulchan Aruch, a Yemenite Rambam, and all kinds of Kabbalistic influences that are permeating Yemen from Tzfat. And he has to come and make order. There were some diehards, like what happens later, Rav Kapach's family, Rabbi Yechia Kapach, Amori Yashish, who comes and he makes war. We only follow the Rambam. We reject Kabbalah. No Maran. That's what happens in the Bet Midrash of Kapach. I'm not sharing an opinion on that. That's the reality. You have Rabbi David Mashriki, who writes the Shtilei Zetim. His whole purpose is to rally all the Yemenites to follow Maran, pure Maran. And that's the reason why in his book, even though he's Yemenite, he rejects entirely commenting on the Ramah, because the Ramah is a deviation to him. If the Yemenites can give up their minhagim for Maran, the Ashkenazim can do it too. And you have the Maharitz. The Maharitz has a unique and inconsistent approach, which many people disliked him for. Sometimes like the Rambam, sometimes like Maran, sometimes like Ashkenazim, sometimes like Sephardim, sometimes like the Mekubalim, sometimes against the Mekubalim. Rav Ratzon Arusi says, Maharitz is following the rules of Maran. Maran was a pashran. Maran compromised. He compromised so we could have one code of Jewish law to follow, and we could all be united. My friends, I'm going to speak to you personally now. When I look around the Jewish community today, and I see Sephardim, I see Ashkenazim, I see the different denominations of Sephardim and Ashkenazim. I see when I approve something good for Sephardim and how the Ashkenazim, oh, it's not good for me. I see when I write something for Ashkenazim that has gelatin, something I don't want to eat it. Sephardim say I don't want to eat it. I see the Perud HaLevavot, what Haman says, Haman in the Megillah. Yeshno Am Echad, there's one nation. Mefozar Umforad Ben Amedinot, that is scattered out, that is not together. And I look at myself and I say, how long will we continue to live such a crazy reality? So my brother is allowed to eat something. My sister, I don't have, by the way, my sister can eat rice until she gets married to her Ashkenazi husband who hasn't seen Ashkenaz for 100 years, and my brother who hasn't seen Yemen or Morocco for 100 years. When she gets married to an Ashkenazi man, now she has to stop. The rice cakes that were kasher for her yesterday are not kasher for her today. If you think that it's not such a big deal, it's right. What about all the Jewish books that have been written? The halachot. What if you go to a Sephardic person's house? What, can you use his oven? Can you not use his oven? What if you go to an Ashkenazi person's house? They don't keep chalak. They don't eat glad kasher meat. They only eat regular kasher meat. Can I eat his food? Can I not eat his food? When I get married, whose minhag do we follow? The husband's minhag, the wife's minhag? all of this craziness. And I ask and I say, Ribbon Olamim, has any better solution been offered since the time of Maran that anybody has jumped on? And my answer is no, there has not been. Rav Uziel would have been ideal, but it didn't happen. So I have two choices as a rabbi, as a spiritual leader of a community. Do I push people further and further apart from each other, from their family members, from their friends? Or do I continue in the footsteps of my rabbis and their rabbis and their rabbis and your rabbis and your rabbis and their rabbis? And do I try to unite Am Yisrael under one Shulchan Aruch? One Shulchan Aruch that, unlike any other book of halakha that you know, is accepted in every single Bet Knesset, is accepted in every single yeshiva, is accepted in every Jewish home. So much so that even in Hasidic jargon, when they say the Shulchan Aruch says, they're not even referring to Maran. It took me a long time to get that through my head. Shulchan Aruch just means Maran, halakha. Halakha says something. It could be they're not even quoting Maran at all. Maran has become the standard of halakha. If you can offer Am Yisrael a better alternative and they'll listen to you, I'm going to be right there next to you. But until then, why Maran? Why the Shulchan Aruch? There's no doubt in my mind. It's the only book that can unite Am Yisrael. What about inconsistencies? Every single one of those can be discussed. And those inconsistencies need to be discussed. But you should know that they're not malice on the part of Maran. They're not things that Maran didn't know about or didn't hear about. These are calculated decisions of Maran. When my parents sent me to yeshiva, I was always an ideological person who picked arguments with people about ideological matters. And he was sending me into a hotbed of Judaism that was very different from my own Judaism, if I could say it that way. And I find myself in Baltimore, and my father gave me a book. And in the introduction to that book, my father inscribed, he said, Yonatan, pick your fights wisely. I recalled the words of a great general who said that in order to win a war, you must strategically lose battles. You want to win the war, or do you want to win the battle? Do you want to win, or do you want to be right? And that's a choice that we have to make. I want to win the war of Am Yisrael being together. Once we're together, we'll sit down and we'll talk and we'll reassess every inconsistency you might feel. But until we're together, call me a fanatic, call me ideological, call me crazy. Until we're together, I'm going to push with every fiber in my being that the Jewish people should have one standard. That I can go to your house and you can come to my house, and my kids can marry your kids, and your kids can go to the same school as my children, and we can be one Am Yisrael. And if that's not consistent enough with Jewish values, Rabotai, I don't know what is. Ad matai? Until when will the Jewish people be split into two mamlachot? This matter pains me more than I could even express on a video. Maran is my solution. For my Talmidim, it's their solution as well. For those in our Kehillat, I'm not expecting you to follow anything we say. But for those who truly wish to understand where do we come from, why Maran? Why Maran? Why Maran? Because Maran is the one who unites Am Yisrael. Why not the Rambam? Maran himself already told us. Anywhere he doesn't give an opinion, rule like the Rambam. Maran told us Rambam is the ruler of Eretz Yisrael. Maran already 99% of his Shulchan Aruch is like Rambam. For the few places that aren't, let's sit and talk. That's the vision. That's the goal. That's the purpose. I now want to address the next two questions. The question of when is it appropriate and is it possible to rule against Maran with all that glorious introduction? And two, the question of tefillin and chol hamoed. And then three, the question on does Judaism become stagnant, or zev, your word, ossified, if the Jewish people get stuck on the Shulchan Aruch? Those are terrific questions. I wish to address each one of them. B'ktsara.